Last week we started the Gemara on the bottom of Gimel Beis. Dovid Rabbi Simlai, Sheish Meos, 4 lines to the bottom. Dovid Rabbi Simlai, Sheish Meos, V'shlosh mitzvahs nemel Moshe, 630 mitzvahs are told to Moshe, Shlosh Meos v'shishim v'chamesh lavin, Communion Mosachama, 365 negative commands like the days of a solar year, Masayim Ba'arim Mishmone Asay, and 248 positive commands connected Barab Shalom corresponding to a person's limbs. So the question I ended with last week is why we have more los assays in our Torah than we have assays.
It's easier to do an assay.
That might be, but
easier to do a los assay to get schar for not doing a los assay.
Right, that could be one answer. I want to give you the answer that Rabbi Soloveitchik gave. Rabbi Soloveitchik has a fascinating shir which he gave. Rabbi Soloveitchik from Yeshiva University. He has a fascinating answer which he gave to this question when he had to address a bunch of teenagers. I actually think the topic he was talking to them was about what we call today being shomer negia. In other words, contact with the other gender. And he was telling the other gender, figure out which one we're talking about. And why one must abide by that halacha. And he said a fascinating thing. He says there is a secular philosopher of religion whose name was William James. And William James said, the purpose of religion is to make you happy. In other words, all religions in this world, according to William James, are to make you a happy person. So even if for example, Karl Marx, who was the founder of communism, said religion is the opiate of the masses, which means that people who are miserable in this world, they'll be happy because they think of the world to come. And people who are downtrodden by rich people in this world, they'll feel good about themselves because they expect the rich people to burn in the world to come and them to be happy, them to have a paradise. So Karl Marx's perspective was, since he was an atheist, is that this is the rich people suppressing the poor people by distracting them with thoughts of a world to come. Yes?
Oh, so you had a whole theory worked out.
Sorry?
What's the supporting the whatever? What's the rich people thing?
The rich people, it doesn't matter to them since they're enjoying this world. So therefore they don't need religion. That was his premise. In other words, you only need religion if you're unhappy. Right? No. So Did
he think?
So he wanted to know. He thought religion. We should do away with religion, and the masses should rebel against the rich people, and that's the notion. That was the base of communism. So the idea Rabbi Soloveitchik says, and this is a very, very Litvish quote, in that it is Hasidus would argue completely on this. He would says we Litvaks, the Misnagdim, couldn't care less if you're happy. We don't care if you're happy at all in this world. That's not our point. What you're here in this world to do is be heroic, to be a person who is or be, as the Marines say,
With the religious Muslims.
Could be, but they also believe in happiness. Is to be all you can be.
I thought that's why there's suicide bombings.
Yeah, no, because no, that's not true. That's very different. I'll tell you why in a minute. So the Marines, the motto is to be all you can be. It's not their motto, I was Semper Fi, but one of their recruiting statements. So what does that mean? That means that you have to take whatever traits you have, which are, everybody has different traits, which they have tremendous talents. Some people have trait A in which they're talented, and trait B in which they're not talented. Some people are talented in trait B and not in trait A. Some people are talented in both. Some people have a third trait. It's an amazing statement made by Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz, which is extremely depressing. Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz said that in order to fulfill the mitzvah kibbud of the aim properly, you have to figure out the point in which, the aspect in which your parent is the Gadol Hador. Every person in this world is a Gadol Hador in one aspect, in one specific aspect. Because every person has a different purpose in life, and therefore every person is different than any other person, and therefore your parents must be the Gadol Hador in a specific midah, specific attribute, a specific aspect of their lives, and for kibbud of to be fulfilled properly, you have to figure that out, which is a very depressing thing because almost none of us are capable of doing that. But the idea is true whether you can do that or not, which is everybody has a special talent, which is theirs, which they can develop in this world for the sake of heaven. So the sake of heaven, l'shem shamayim, for the sake of God. So the Rabbi Soloveitchik said, if you're trained to be a hero in the material sense, you're trained to be a champion athlete. You're training to be a Navy SEAL. So then, training requires a rigorous, very rigorous regimen and very, very strict parameters of how you live your life, what you eat, when you sleep, how you exercise, what you refrain from, and there are more things that a champion athlete, or for that matter, a commando, has to refrain from that they can indulge in. Because indulgences make you soft, and they don't allow you to become as heroic, as proficient as you can be. So therefore, says Rabbi Soloveitchik, since Judaism is interested in making you heroic, so therefore, we have many more things you have to restrain and refrain from than things you can indulge in. Of course, there is a flip side to this, which is that, of course, if a person is heroic, people who become great runners, right? So it's a tremendously difficult training regimen. I don't know how they do it. I can't even imagine it. But if people become great runners, they have to undergo these tremendous training regimens. But when they finish and they run and they win a race or they break a record, they are ecstatic. But to get there, they have to undergo tremendous amount of pain and difficulty. No pain, no gain. So therefore, the Torah also, it says, if you want to be great, and we want everybody to be great in their own way, we have to give you more negative commands and positive commands. We have to make sure that you do not deviate from that path of perfection which is necessary in order to accomplish all you can. So that's why we have more los assays than assays. If a person is able to indulge everywhere they go, again, a person becomes soft. A person can do anything they want, becomes soft. We want to have a rigorous training schedule. And it happens to be that the rigorous training schedule is for something spiritual, not for something material, but the idea is the same. So that's what we have, 248 mitzvahs assay, only 248, but you have 365 mitzvahs lo saseh. And there's a symbolism in that, obviously, which is 365 represents all the days of the year, not the Jewish year, but the solar year, the secular year. Why is that? Because these mitzvahs regulate our relationship with the material existence of this world. In other words, everything, this world's material existence is symbolized by the solar year. Its spiritual existence is symbolized by the lunar year. That's why the solar year is used by most nations, and lunar year is used by the Jews and other more spiritual nations. So the idea is that we have 365 mitzvahs lo saseh, which tell us how to relate to this world. 248 mitzvahs saseh, which correspond to the limbs of the body, tell us how to uplift ourselves, to make ourselves, use the powers we have to make ourselves more spiritual. Sure. Now is that clear?
Yeah.
There's now what? No?
So you're saying that you go from, just like a runner that can deviate from his
training schedule. Yes.
So you have to.
Right.
You can't deviate from
Okay. So that's how the Rabbi Soloveitchik explained why the Torah asks you to refrain from, connecting to the other gender, to touch it, because that's what builds your character. If you don't give in to your desires whenever you want. Now,
so then,
one second. Let me just answer.
Desire to do something like
Moshe.
to play sports, but you're giving into your desire if you're playing.
What?
If it's because
so everything
that you shouldn't give into your desires, you have a lot of desires that are not.
So the Torah tells us by what it made prohibited, what it made permitted, what the relationship is supposed to be. What the Torah doesn't forbid is because it's good. Person can use that l'shem shamayim. Person can use sports when a person exercises to stay healthy and to become
we don't usually do that.
What?
We don't usually do that. We don't think while we're playing.
We don't think about it, but that's why we should be doing it, and it's in final analysis, it is a good reason to do it. That's why I'm against spectator sports, because I don't think they have any benefit to a person's character. Yeah.
So why did you say that what did you say about Shomer Negiah?
So that's why we ask you to be Shomer Negiah. We tell you, don't indulge in relationships with the other gender, except when appropriate, and it's not appropriate outside of marriage. Okay? So now,
It's not even appropriate to just touch a girl. It's not.
Yeah, that's what.
Yes, that's what we're saying. It's not appropriate. Yeah.
You know, see how it's inappropriate or appropriate?
It's inappropriate.
You can't use it.
Then
You
it could-
can't.
you can
It's
leak
not in
out,
a.
I think.
And it's not. It can't be done in a way usually to
It can lead
l'shem
to-
shamayim.
Yeah.
A handshake can like lead to deeper relationship.
It's not l'shem shamayim. It's not l'shem shamayim because it's not being done to cultivate a meaningful relationship, which only happens in the course of marriage. Boys and girls outside marriage, when they have relationships, they're not done for the sake of heaven.
Relationship if you touch a girl.
But that's where it comes from. It comes from an idea.
Nobody puts the barrier in this
Yes.
spot.
So it's a good idea. Good quote. Barrier in the right spot. So if a woman sticks out her hand to
Wear
you,
gloves all the time.
My
And-
Rabbi said today, that he said it straight out.
Shake your hand,
He does
take
it,
it
he
off.
said that I'm Orthodox Jew and you don't touch.
okay. So if you're in a situation where
And they respected it.
if you're in a situation where it's not avoidable for whatever reason, you don't want to embarrass somebody, so then you can return the handshake. You can't extend your hand, but you can return the handshake. Okay?
In South America, it's like customary that like you kiss the woman's hand.
Yeah. So that's interesting. We don't
Live in South America.
we don't live in South America, but it's interesting. The Ben Ish Chai, who was a great rabbi in Baghdad, he has a tshuva about women who used to come and kiss his hand, because that's what they used to do to great rabbis. The Smartim still kiss the hands of rabbis. So he said, you're allowed to allow the women to kiss your hand, because it's not considered to be a sign of affection, but a sign of respect. So it depends on the culture. So there's another thing I wanted to point out about this, where it says, the person who made this drasha said that 613 mitzvahs, his name is Rabbi Simlai. Simla in Hebrew is a dress or a garment. It's used you can use for any type of garment, not just a dress. So it's a fascinating thing.
Where are you?
What? 4 lines to the bottom of Chav Gimel base. So the fascinating line which we say in Baruch Nafshi. Baruch Nafshi, of course, we say on Rosh Chodesh, and it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Ote Or Kasalma. Anybody remember that pasuk? Hashem wraps himself in light like a garment. Now the question is, if you wrap yourself in a garment, if you wrap something which is light in a garment, so then you can't. It makes it darker. It doesn't make it lighter. It doesn't. It conceals. It doesn't illuminate. So what does it mean? HaKadosh Baruch Hu wraps himself in light like a garment. Now, I know nowadays we could say that. Well, you have garments. You should put light bulbs on. But back then, what does the metaphor mean? So there's a very powerful idea. I believe it's from the Michtav Milyo, if I recall correctly, which is that can you see light in this room? Yeah. No, you can't. Light is invisible. What can you see? You can see a light bulb.
You see brightness.
But you can see the light. You can't see brightness.
Sort of seeing.
You're seeing the light come hitting the bulb. Whereas the bulb is what allows you to see the light.
What about the sun?
Otherwise, you couldn't see it, right?
What about the sun?
Well,
The sun also has. You're not seeing the light. You're seeing the material existence of the sun.
It's actually true.
Okay.
You see it in the air. You see it off like
Right.
the table. Or off.
See it bounce off to things. You see it. You never see light directly. You see things.
What about from the sun? From the sun.
So you see a flame. A flame has. It's not. It's not substance in the normal sense, but a flame is something physical. You can't see the light itself. You can see the flame. The flame is not light. The light comes from the flame. By the way, at the heart of the flame there is always a hollow where there is nothing. So if you light a flame, at the heart of the flame there's nothing.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because light hurts.
Yeah. So there's something deep about that. Anyway, so you can't see light. You can only see light when it bounces off something or comes through something. So to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he relates to us, you can't relate to him directly because he's completely light. So how do you... Sorry? Moshe Rabbeinu what? Yes, but even that, there's a certain aspect of Kiloi Rani Odam B'chai. Right? So
You can only see light when it's going through something. Why can't we see when it's going through the air?
no, it has to hit something, not just when it's going something that it hits, something physical that hits, like the light bulb. You know, You can't. The air itself is it's a gas. You can't see it. Some gases you could see through, but argue the way Hashem designed the atmosphere, you can't. So the same thing is true. How do you perceive Hashem? So how do you connect to Hashem if He's completely light? So the idea is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made Himself a garment through which the light can now be seen as the light goes through the garment. The garment is the mitzvos. The way in which we connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is through that garment of light, which is the mitzvos. So the simla of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one of them, is light. Is the mitzvos. The mitzvos are the garment through which we can, as a result, we can perceive the light. In Barchi Nafshi, that's not what Dovid HaMelech is referring to. The HaMelech there is referring to the phenomena of nature. There's a German poet, non-Jewish, his name was Herder, who learned Hebrew just in order to be able to read Barchi Nafshi in the original. We mumble it every Rosh Chodesh as if it's meaningless, but he said it's the most extraordinary poem in the world. I once gave share for a few months on Barchi Nafshi alone, because every line is packed with amazing insights into nature and how HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows Himself in the world through nature. So there's several garments HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts on in order to show Himself. One of them is Torah mitzvahs, another of them is nature. And that way we perceive HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And these are ways we come to emunah in Hashem as well. We perceive Hashem through the wonders of nature. We perceive Hashem through Torah mitzvahs. That's how it confirms our belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so that's I think it's Rabbi Simlai who said this. And now he gives a pasuk. Mikra, the last line, Chalakil Base. Mikra, what pasuk teaches us that there are 630 mitzvahs? Torah Tzivalon Moshe, Marasha, because Baruch gave commandments Torah as an inheritance. Torah B'Gematria, Shis, it's on the page, Shis Mi'av Chatzre, 611. Havi. Anochi v'lo yelecha mipiach v'resh manum. There are two other mitzvos which we heard directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which are the first two mitzvos of Anochi v'lo yelecha, the first two mitzvos of the Yatzeres Adibros. So the Svarim say that Anochi v'lo yelecha, Anochi is the foundation for all mitzvahs Saseh, and lo yelecha is the foundation for all mitzvahs lo Saseh. And everything emerges from them. And the other mitzvahs we got from Moshe Rabbeinu, and we know last week's parsha and Parshas Bahar. This week's parsha, sorry. This week's parsha, Parshas Bahar. For the first Rashi says that the Minor Shemitah is Sinai, but Rad teaches us that just like all the mitzvah Shemitah was given out Sinai, all the mitzvahs were given out Sinai, meaning that they all came to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai at the height of his powers to give them to us directly. But the first two mitzvahs we had to go even higher than that. We had to go to the level that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Himself gave us them, and they're the foundation for all the other mitzvahs. So that's the idea of the 630 mitzvahs. But the thing is, 630 mitzvahs is a lot, and we don't do all of them. There's a sefer called the Sefer Mitzvahs HaKotzer of the Chafetz Chaim, which goes to the mitzvahs which we can do b'zman hazeh. And they're far fewer than actually the 613, maybe half. I don't remember exactly how many. So if that's the case, how do we have to find some way to make things easier for us to figure out what exactly we should be doing, because we can't get to all Tarag mitzvahs. So it's easier to figure out what to do if you know what the purpose of Torah mitzvahs are. What they're supposed to do, make you happen. Make happen within you. And I don't think I mentioned Ramban last week in Kitetse, about shechting. Did I mention that last week? Right? So it said, what?
Yeah, about the head.
Right. Because Baruch Hu doesn't care if you shech from the front of the neck or the back of the neck. It's for you, to teach you to be more refined. It's more humane to go from the animal from the front of the neck. And after that, Chazal say, Lo nitna mitzvahs so tzarif ben asabrios. All mitzvahs are given to make us more refined. So mitzvahs are given to make us more refined. But what does refinement mean? What are we looking for? So the Gemara has a fascinating sequence in which it goes through the ever-diminishing amount of principles which one is supposed to derive from the Torah and which the Torah represents. And we're going to start now, which says, Bo Dovid v'aminan al chadesrei. So Dovid came and he said, you know what, there are 11 principles that the Torah is supposed to impart to us. You got these 11 midos? That they have everything.
I learned this today in the morning.
You did?
Yeah.
Good. So now we'll learn it together. So the Chsev Mizmor LeDavid Hashem Miyoger Ba'olecha Mishkan Bar Kodshecha. Holech Tamim. What does Holech Tamim mean?
So it's perfect.
What?
It's perfect.
What does perfect mean? You said you learned this morning. What does Holech Tamim mean?
Oh, he everything he does is for
Without
Hashem.
mistakes.
What?
Without mistakes.
No. The pasuk says, "Tamim tiem Hashem Elokecha." Be tamim with Hashem. Tamim means you should be perfect, but it means that you should be completely trust in Hashem. Your complete trust should be in Hashem. Holech tamim means you don't give in to superstitions. In other words, you don't the things which people think are going to give them good luck, bad luck. That's not for our Jews. Ein Mazel Yisrael. What?
How come we have schools then?
It's a good question. Schools are very difficult things to understand in Judaism. It's not very, very difficult to understand. And if they work, they only work because somebody had kavanah in using them l'shem shemai properly, not because you wore them or did them. Wearing them and doing them in of themselves cannot be meaningful in the sense of holech tamim.
So you think you're somebody just like let's say in school like by
You're getting Aliyah.
by Havdalah, you think those the great
Yeah, I always make fun of that because I don't believe it accomplishes anything. Many people have not become rich as a result of taking the grape juice and wine and putting it in their pockets or wherever else they put it. If it was really, if you did it as a tefillah, in other words, you're saying when you're doing this, a tefillah doesn't have to be something which is verbal. A tefillah can be something which is practical too. If you say, I'm doing this as a form of tefillah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, please make me rich. Well, so it may work, probably won't, but that would be the only way which would be effective. Okay? So that's holech tamim. That's why the Rambam was very held all of astrology is just a myth. It's a big machlekes between the Rambam on the one hand and the few astrology. Belief in the stars, that the stars tell you the future. He said it says that you should be tamim Hashem Elokecha. You shouldn't pay attention to any of those things. So holech tamim means you have perfect trust in Hashem and you don't take into account all these sorts of potential voodoo types of things in this world. Okay, that's one holech tamim. Poel tzedek. What does poel tzedek mean?
He's a righteous one.
What does it mean to? What does it mean?
He works and he doesn't like interrupt his work to take away from who's hiring him.
Right. So that's one possibility. Holech tzedek could mean. So poel tzedek means a worker who works in a trustworthy way. He doesn't take off time when he shouldn't. He doesn't steal office supplies. Right? He makes sure to give his worker the full amount of effort he should be giving, and so on and so forth. That's one way of understanding poel tzedek. The other way of understanding poel tzedek means somebody who actively tries to bring tzedek to the world. The world is a place of injustice. Many unjust things happen. In a school, every day you probably see numerous unjust acts between students, just passing through the halls. And teachers, fine. The numerous unjust acts between students and teachers and teachers maybe. And a poel tzedek is somebody who actually makes the attempt to right that imbalance in a deliberate and practical way. Not just they see it and they feel bad. Poel tzedek means you bring tzedek into the world. It's not necessarily a very easy thing. Because
The notifications.
I tried, didn't work. Okay, so the poel tzedek means somebody who is going out and doing actively tzedek. And it says in Torah, tzedek tirdof. It means you have to run after tzedek. Tzedek doesn't come on its own. Tzedek tirdof, and it's very difficult because as we go through life, we see that this world is a world of sheker. Everything is not true. Everything is unjust. But we have to do what we can. What? Obviously not everything. I'm being exaggerating, but many things. And we have to do what we can in order to make the world a more just place. So that's tzedek, going out and working actively to do tzedek. The dover emes bilvavo. Oh, what does mean dover emes bilvavo?
The dover.
Yes, dover emes bilvavo.
From Diver?
Yes, but it says bilvavo. Are you sure you learned this today?
Yeah. Wait.
How like he was down in and some guy came in offered.
Rav Safra, yeah, very good. Okay, so So Dover Emes Bilvavo is is somebody who is. By the way, the pshatim I give you are not necessarily going to be the Gemara. The Gemara's pshatim are slightly different, but I'm giving you a pshat in the pasuk. Besides what the Gemara is going to say, because the Gemara only gives one pshat, but there are many, and any pasuk in Torah, many pshatim are possible. So Tanakh. So Dover Emes Bilvavo means a person speaks truth in his heart, meaning that if he made a decision, and that decision was something which would have an impact, such as Reb Safra decided to sell a certain price, he doesn't then change his mind, even though it was something which he just thought in his heart, and therefore he never committed himself verbally to it. Nevertheless, if a person is a righteous person, in that sense, a person is Dover Emes Bilvavo. So that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that a person has to have true values in his heart. Now, what does it mean to have true values in his heart? So it means that most of the things, this goes back to what we said last week, you have to at least one mitzvah lishma. Most things we do because of, not out of emes, but rather because of some other ulterior motive. In other words, you do things not lishma. So Dover Emes Bilvavo means he speaks truth in his heart, he's doing things in his heart for the right reason. And a person obviously does things with the right reason, that's the idea of doing lishma. Okay, next one. Lo ragal al lishono. So of course it means a person doesn't speak rechilus, right? So you know that Rashi says rechilus and regel are related, right?
The same thing.
The same thing, right? Because the person who's holech rachil, he goes all over the place with his regel and tells gossip. So the lo ragal al lishono means he doesn't tell rechilus. There is no. And it's interesting language, lo ragal al lishono, right? He doesn't want to have rechilus on his tongue. Now this is, it's almost recognizing human weakness. Everybody in the world is interested in gossip. That's what it is, right?
You what?
Everybody in the world is interested in gossip, finding out what's going on with somebody else. But you shouldn't speak it. It's kind of like the flip side of the previous thing. Dover Emes Bilvavo means your intentions could be l'shem shamayim. Lo ragal l'shono means everybody, but on the other hand, everybody has this idea, they enjoy a good story about somebody else, but don't go and spread it. At least refrain from going and spreading these things. Okay? Lo sal re'eu ra, he didn't do something bad to his friend. Now, of course, this doesn't mean something wicked, right? Because something wicked is wicked, and we're talking about what do you have to do in order to be a righteous person, and not being wicked doesn't make you automatically righteous. So the Gemara is going to give an explanation of it, but just before we get to that explanation, that lo sarei ra means even, in my opinion, I think it means when I give advice to another person, right? So I can give, very often the Torah says I can give negative advice because it helps me, right? In other words, when somebody comes to ask for advice, I always have an idea, what's best for me in this interaction. So lo sarei ra means even if a person, he can't tell, and it's just something which you know in your heart is not the right thing to tell him, then you should refrain from telling him that. V'cherpa lo nasa kravo, and he didn't tolerate when his relative was insulted. Now, this sounds kind of Muslim, like the Muslims, they kill people for family honor, right? But the idea is that a person has to be able to be concerned with his relatives more than people who are more distant, and that's not easy. As a joke which I heard many years ago, but I read in a Parsha sheet last week, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky made the same joke recently, which is that, and I'm not sure, whoever heard it took him seriously, but I don't think it's serious. There's a famous kasha. The kasha is, it says, V'ahavta re'echa kamocha, right? You should love your friend as yourself. And the other it says, Lo tisnas achicha bilbavecha. You shouldn't hate your brother in your heart. So the question is, you just told me I have to love my friend. Why do you have to tell me not to hate my brother?
Hate and love are not opposites.
That's a deep answer. But
Your brother, sometimes you fight with.
Oh, that's what Reb Chaim said. He said, to command you to love your brother we can't do. It's not possible. But we can command you at least not to hate your brother. And that's, he says, now, the last week's parasha, I keep saying that because Eretz Yisrael is last week's parasha. This week's parasha, the Chutz, it says that you should, by onos mamon, it says that you shouldn't cheat your brother. And by onos dvarim, which means verbal abuse, you shouldn't verbally abuse your friend. So he says again, why the difference in language? So he says, your brother, we can't expect you not to verbally abuse, but at least you shouldn't cheat them in business, right? So the relationship between, it's interesting because the relationship between close people, it very often has much more friction. Probably the most friction you have in any relationship is with your parents, because it's a very close relationship. So it has has, like you said before, love and hate, they're not opposites, but which is true. They have the relationships with close people are much harder to maintain, and much harder to maintain evenly because you're emotionally involved in them. And therefore, I think that what he's saying that he was krovo, even though the person is your relative, even though you have a grudge against them, the cousin who never came to the bar mitzvah, the uncle who didn't come to the wedding, nevertheless, you do not even tolerate, you don't embarrass them yourselves, but you don't even tolerate their embarrassment. Okay, that's a tough thing to do. So, that is, I think, what?
Tolerate their embarrassment.
In other words, if somebody else comes and embarrasses your relative, you will not allow that to go on. I'm not saying you should beat up the person who did it, but it says you're not supposed to just let it go and not get involved. So then the next one is nivzeh beinov nim'as. Person is shameful in his eyes and disgusting. The way what Rashi says here is about Chizkiyo is that he dragged his father's dead body through the streets of Yerushalayim in order to show he was rejecting his father's wickedness. But there's an amazing chazal which says, the person should always make himself like he's a threshold on which everybody steps. Which is a very, very interesting thing, because in modern psychology, it's not like that. In modern psychology, they say everybody has to have the self-esteem. You ever heard the term self-esteem? And so self-esteem becomes, in many systems nowadays, the be-all and end-all. I have to have self-esteem, otherwise I can't function. Have to have self-esteem, otherwise people are going to step all over me. So self-esteem in Torah does not come from having a certain arrogance, or a certain independence, or a certain sense of how great I am, but it comes from how much I serve other people. The purpose, self-esteem in its ideal form is one in which I esteem myself because I've done something, as he said before, heroic. It wasn't me to do something heroic, something which is usually towards other people, a service which I'm doing in order to help them out, because that's really what a person is supposed to do in this world. So a person, nivzeh beinov nivas, means that a person should be willing to tolerate embarrassment for the purpose of avodas Hashem. There's the author from Kelm. The author from Kelm said that, he made a takon in his base medrash that every Simchas Torah, I think it was, they would bid for the honor of who's going to clean up the base medrash. They would bid for the honor of who's going to sweep the base and clean the base medrash. In other words, it was considered to be an honor to be the one to sweep and clean, right? To wash the floors. And there was one old man, I believe Rabbi Yochanan brings down, who went around with his beard and wiped things clean with his beard. And that was just to be a very high madrega. So, okay, to us it sounds weird, and it is weird. But the point is that a person is supposed to want to be the person who serves. I'm talking about myself, we try to get out of anything we can possibly get out of, especially when it comes to cleaning up. And yet the author from Kelm said that that is something which a person should want to do, to serve and help other people. A person should be willing to be the janitor, the cleanup person. And this is something which, by us, we're afraid, I'm talking about me, not about you, we're afraid that if we do things like that, it's going to diminish our self-esteem. We're going to feel bad about ourselves, and we're not going to, and that's going to make us feel that we're worthless, and that's going to send us into deep depression. So that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be everything I do as a favor to you should make me feel like a better person. So even in something which seems to be embarrassing to me, seems to be disgusting to me, but if it's for the purpose of Avodas Hashem, then you have to do it anyway. And that's going to make you be a better person and actually be able to feel like a better person. So this is why a person has to be willing to tolerate lots of abuse, like certain teachers in the classrooms. They tolerate lots of abuse. Why is that? Because that's what a person has to do in order to be able to serve. In other words, you have to be able to be really willing to tolerate in order to teach. Otherwise, you're never going to get anything across. So I'm not talking about myself, of course. But the idea is that if a person wants to do things l'shem shamayim, then they have to do things in a way which, even if they themselves become debased by it to a certain extent, they're going to do it anyway. Let's go further. Then he says, Hashem mechabed. This is also a tough thing. I mean, you give honor to people who fear God. Now, why is it a tough thing? It should be an easy thing, right? Because that means, especially for when you get sorry.
Why is this is in like ways of life?
Right, and that
It's supposed to be describing Hashem. It's a pasuk describing Hashem.
It's not describing Hashem. It says Miya Gurba Alecha, who's going to live in your tent, meaning who's going to get Olam Haba. Describing who's in God's tent, who's going to be a party to God's party, be invited to God's party. But I started making another point, Simcha, which is that these are not mitzvahs. None of these things are mitzvahs. These are midos. And that's an important point to realize, which is that the things which we're talking about here are not mitzvahs because they're the purpose of mitzvahs.
Isn't lo regel al shana mitzvah?
What?
Isn't lo regel al shana?
Well, it could be, but it's only if it's sometimes when it's not also because of rechilus, but you shouldn't say it anyway. In other words, you should be just not speak it. But you're right. The rechilus is also a midah besides being a mitzvah. So I just want to point this out. Reb Chaim Vital, was the Talmud Arizal, asked why are midos not mentioned in Torah. Never says in Torah, don't get angry. And we know the Rambam brings down anybody who gets angry, it's as if they're serving avodah zarah. But so the Torah should say lo tichos. There's no such mitzvah, right? No such avera to get angry in the Torah itself. It doesn't say. It says in Torah Moshe Rabbeinu was anav mikol adam asher pnei adama. He was very humble, but it doesn't say tiyeh anav. It doesn't say be humble. Why the mitzvahs? Why are these midos not mentioned in the Torah? So there are two interpretations. There are two reasons, and they're not contradictions. They complement each other. One of them is, as you all know, it says in Pirkei Avos, derech eretz karma la Torah. If you don't have derech eretz, you can't learn Torah. A person has to have basic midos in order to learn Torah, because Torah is divine wisdom. It's not material wisdom, and therefore you have to have good midos to begin with. Derech eretz karma la Torah. But Reb Chaim Vital says a different thing, which is based on, of course, Chazal, that the purpose of mitzvahs is, like we said before, to give you midos tovos. All of Torah is to give you midos tovos. I'm sorry, Reb Chaim Vital is the one who says derech eretz karma la Torah. I apologize. He says, because Reb Chaim Vital, one of the Arizal's Talmud. So Ramban, which he said last week, is saying that Torah gives you good midos. And this is what does it mean? Dovid HaMelech is saying, you want to know, it's all very confusing. There's 603 mitzvahs. Now then, can you do? Let's see what the mitzvahs are supposed to make you. The mitzvahs are supposed to make you into this kind of person. So when you do the mitzvahs, have this in mind, that this is what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to become a person who has all these ideas, all these midos tovos within them, and not the midos tovos and not the midos ros. Okay, the next one is there are a couple of them now which coming up, which are actually are mitzvahs, direct mitzvahs, but they're still at the same time midos. But this one, Yirei Hashem B'Chabed, means very often, I don't want to be mechabed somebody else because, again, it makes me think that I am less. If I give somebody else kavod, respect, so then it makes you think, that means I'm less worthy of respect than they are, which is again, an ego problem. It's a problem with your own sense of the dignity, which is warped. The reality is the more you respect somebody else, especially Yirei Hashem, the more respect you deserve. Because the idea of respecting others means that you're a person who has a sense of the importance of another human being, the sense of importance of other people, and that makes you a much more important person in and of yourself. You know, there's a Chavos HaBavos who says you should never look down on anybody, because there is the shouldn't look down on anybody because either if they're better than you, then they're better than you, and if they're worse than you, maybe they have less potential than you, and they're accomplishing more with their limited potential than you're accomplishing with your great potential, right? So therefore, you should never look down on anybody. You should always look up to everybody. In other words, when I come into, you know what that means? It means I come into a classroom, and I see you guys in front of me. I have to think to myself, perhaps you're all better than I am, because maybe, yes, I know much more, but that's because I had many more years to accomplish that. Maybe in the amount of years which you had, you've accomplished much more knowledge than I have, relatively speaking. Maybe your midos, maybe I have better midos than you, probably not, but maybe I have better midos than you do. But that's because I've had more years to work on it. And by the time you get to my age, you'll have much better midos than I have today. So it's a very difficult thing to do. It's not easy, especially when you come to a classroom and people are being wild in the back of the room. But that is what a teacher has to actually do. They have to look at the people in the classroom as if they are better than him.
What's more important, to love Hashem or to fear Hashem?
What?
What's more important?
They're both important. Different people have different their characters. Some people find fear more important, some people find love more important.
And also, on that, should we look at ourselves as children of Hashem, or
the slaves of Hashem?
Or are we supposed to look at Hashem?
Different times of life, different times of the day, you have different thoughts. They're not contradictory. And so you can switch off. What? There's no right answer to that. For each person, it's going to be different, even different time. I'm telling you, there's no one answer for that. It's not. It's a complicated answer because every time is different. But so let me just finish up these things, then we'll stop. So it says, if he takes shul, even if it's something negative, not bad, but negative, he'll still do it. He does not going to loan with interest. And he doesn't take bribes. Actually, I really should come back to those things next week. Okay, so we'll stop here, and there are cookies, I believe.